The airport was alive with the buzz of early morning travelers, rolling suitcases gliding across the polished floors, the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the air. Excitement crackled around me. Families laughing, children pointing at the planes through the towering windows, couples holding hands as they checked their tickets. It was supposed to be a special day, a family vacation, one my son, Noah, had been looking forward to for weeks. He stood beside me, gripping my hand tightly, his little backpack stuffed with his favorite toys, his stuffed dinosaur, his coloring book, and the crumpled-up brochure of Hawaii he had been carrying for weeks, excitedly pointing out all the places he wanted to visit. His mother, Sophia, stood on my other side, not holding my hand, not even looking at me, just tapping away on her phone, her lips curved in a small, smug smile. Her mother, Eleanor, the queen of control, stood beside her, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp as she surveyed the crowd like she was looking down at peasants from her throne. Even here, even in an airport, she carried herself like she was better than everyone else, like the world should bow at her feet. We approached the check-in counter, and I handed over our passports and boarding passes, expecting a smooth process. But then, the woman behind the counter frowned at her screen. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see a ticket for your son." My brows furrowed. That didn't make sense. I had confirmed the booking twice. I turned to Eleanor, expecting confusion, maybe an apology, but what I got instead was a smirk. A slow, satisfied smirk. She waved a dismissive hand, as if this was some minor inconvenience. "Oh, there were just too many of us, so we decided your kids should stay behind." Her voice was light, casual, like she wasn't dropping a bombshell in the middle of the airport, like she wasn't abandoning my son. Noah's little hand tightened around mine. My heart stopped. I turned to Sophia, expecting her to correct her mother, to tell me this was some kind of misunderstanding, but she giggled. She linked arms with her mother and smiled up at her, as if they were sharing some private joke. "It's a trip for real family, after all," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. Real family. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, trying to process what I had just heard. This was her son, her own child, and she was leaving him behind without a second thought. Noah's voice was small, trembling. "Dad, I want to go too." His little fingers clutched my sleeve, his big, innocent eyes filling with tears. I felt something inside me snap. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Something deadly. Eleanor sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. He'll be fine." Sophia giggled again. They were laughing. Laughing. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply reached down, took my son's hand, and turned around. And I walked away. Behind me, I could hear Sophia's laughter, the way she whispered something to her mother, something about how dramatic I was being. I kept walking. My steps were steady. My heartbeat was not. They thought this was over. They thought they had one. They had no idea what was coming. We sat in the terminal, Noah curled up beside me, still sniffling, still clutching his little backpack as if it was the only thing keeping him together. I looked down at him, my heart breaking in ways I didn't even know were possible. He didn't understand. He didn't understand why his own mother had left him behind. How could I tell him? How could I explain that the woman who had given birth to him, who was supposed to love him unconditionally, had decided he wasn't important enough to take on a family vacation? "Dad?" His voice was soft, unsure. I turned to him. "Yeah, buddy?" He sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Did I do something bad? My entire body tensed. I knelt in front of him, gripping his small shoulders, looking him straight in the eye. No, Noah. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't about you. This is about them. His lower lip quivered. Then why didn't they want me to come? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. He deserved the truth. Because they don't understand what real family is. But I do. And at that moment, I made a silent promise. A promise that I would never let my son feel unwanted again. A promise that I would show him what real love looked like. A promise that I would teach him the difference between people who take and people who give. I pulled out my phone and made a quick call. Noah sniffled, looking up at me. "Who are you calling?" I smiled at him. my mind already working, my plan already forming. Someone who knows what real family is. 30 minutes later, we were on a flight, not to Hawaii, but to Disney World. And as I watched my son's face light up with excitement, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Freedom. Sophia thought she had one. She thought I would just sit back and take it. She thought she had all the control. But she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. And I was just getting started. Noah's quiet sobs were the only sound I could hear as we moved through the bustling airport. The world around us blurred. Laughing families, clinking luggage wheels, announcements echoing overhead. None of it mattered. All I could focus on was the way my son's small fingers clutched my hand, how his shoulders trembled with each breath he took. "Why didn't they want me to come, Dad?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but the weight of those words crushed me. I stopped walking and knelt in front of him. His big, innocent eyes, filled with hurt and confusion, locked onto mine. He gripped the straps of his backpack, his knuckles turning white, as if holding onto it would somehow keep him from crumbling completely. "They don't understand what real family is, son," I said gently, brushing a tear from his cheek. "But I do, and I'm going to prove it to you." Noah sniffled, blinking up at me. He wanted to believe me, but how could he? He had just been abandoned by his own mother, cast aside like an afterthought. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. "Who are you calling?" he asked, his voice shaking. I smiled. "Someone who knows what real family is." I pressed a button and waited as the phone rang. A different destination. 30 minutes later, we were standing in front of a different airline counter. "2 tickets to Orlando, please." The woman behind the desk typed something into the computer and smiled. "Flying to Disney World, huh?" I looked down at Noah, his tears still fresh but his curiosity sparking through the sadness. "Yeah," I said, squeezing his little hand. "We are." Noah's lips parted in surprise. His grip on my hand loosened as realization sank in. "Really?" I nodded. "Really?" The woman handed us our tickets, and as I took them, I saw something in Noah's eyes that made everything worth it. Hope. By the time we boarded the plane, his sadness had transformed into excitement. He looked out the window, kicking his little feet against the seat, his hands gripping his stuffed dinosaur tightly. "Dad, do you think Mickey Mouse will remember me?" he asked, his voice filled with the innocence of a child who was finally allowed to dream again. I chuckled. "Of course, buddy. He's been waiting for you." And just like that, the pain Sophia and Eleanor had inflicted was drowning beneath something stronger, something real, the trip of a lifetime. When we landed in Orlando, the warmth of the Florida sun felt like a new beginning. As we stepped out of the airport, Noah's eyes widened at the sight of palm trees swaying in the breeze, at the colorful Disney banners decorating the streets. "This is way better than Hawaii," he exclaimed, practically bouncing on his toes. I laughed. "Told you." The moment we arrived at the park, I knew I had made the right choice. Noah's sadness vanished the second he spotted Mickey Mouse in the distance. "Dad, look," he pointed. His face lit up with joy as he tugged on my hand. I barely had time to react before he took off running, his little backpack bouncing against his back. I followed behind, watching as he ran straight into Mickey's open arms. For the first time in weeks, he was smiling, really smiling. And I felt something in my chest that had been missing for a long time. Happiness. The father-son bond. We spent the entire day riding roller coasters, eating way too much cotton candy, and laughing until our stomachs hurt. Noah screamed with delight as we raced through Space Mountain. He waved excitedly at the parade floats, his eyes sparkling under the fireworks. He ran through the park with his Mickey ears slightly crooked, his laughter filling the air like music. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Sophia. I wasn't thinking about Eleanor. I wasn't thinking about the betrayal, the cruelty, the injustice of it all. I was thinking about this moment, about my son, about how much I loved him, about how he deserved better than the family who left him behind. As we sat by the castle, watching the fireworks explode in the sky, Noah leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy? This is the best trip ever." I smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. Yeah, it is. And I meant it. Because this wasn't just a vacation. This was a promise. A promise that I would never let anyone make my son feel unwanted again. A promise that I would show him that real love didn't come with conditions. A promise that I would never let him down the way his mother had. And while Sophia was off sipping expensive cocktails in Hawaii, parading around in her designer outfits, posting fake smiles on social media, she had no idea that she had already lost. Because real family isn't about money. It isn't about luxury resorts and social media likes. It's about moments like this. Moments where a father holds his son close under the night sky, feeling his tiny heartbeat against his own, knowing that this right here, is what truly matters. Back at the hotel, later that night, as Noah fell asleep in the giant hotel bed, his stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm, I sat by the window, looking out at the shimmering lights of Orlando. I reached for my phone and checked my messages. Nothing from Sophia. Nothing from Eleanor. No calls. No concern. Not even a fake excuse for why they had left their own child behind. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a moment of clarity. This was a decision. Sophia thought she had control. She thought she could dictate who was worthy of being part of her world. She thought she could laugh at my son's pain and walk away without consequences. But she was wrong. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Noah. And I was about to make sure that when karma finally came for her, she wouldn't see it coming. While Noah and I were building real memories, ones filled with laughter, love, and genuine happiness, Sophia and Eleanor were living in a carefully curated illusion. I knew them both too well. Sophia, always obsessed with appearances, would be making sure her social media feed was flawless. Perfectly angled selfies by the pool, videos of luxurious dinners, group photos with Eleanor and the rest of their so-called family, all smiling, all pretending. But something was missing, something their followers would notice. And it didn't take long. The questions began. The first cracks in their illusion came in the form of innocent comments beneath their posts. Where's Noah? Didn't you guys take a family trip? Why isn't your husband in any of these pictures? At first, the comments were subtle, a trickle, easy to ignore. Sophia likely rolled her eyes, brushing them off. Eleanor probably scoffed, waving a hand dismissively, as if the people asking these questions were beneath her. But the internet has a way of catching on. When people notice something off, they start digging. And as the hours passed, the trickle turned into a flood. Wait, Noah's not there? Isn't he just a little kid? Hold on. Why is your husband missing too? Something feels weird about this. By the time Sophia woke up the next morning, her notifications were flooded. Hundreds of comments. People asking, questioning, demanding answers. And the more she ignored them, the worse it got. Because people weren't stupid. They could see that she was avoiding the topic. And avoidance? It only made them more curious. The fake damage control. I knew exactly how Sophia would react. She would try to cover it up. I could picture her now, sitting by the hotel pool in Hawaii, frantically typing out a caption, trying to spin the situation into something that made her look like the victim. And sure enough, she did. Her next post was a selfie, her expression slightly forced, her caption carefully crafted. Sometimes, life throws unexpected challenges at us. We wanted a full family trip, but unfortunately, things didn't work out as planned. Noah is safe and happy with his dad, and we are making the most of this time together. Family means love no matter where you are. Red heart. It was textbook manipulation. The kind of post designed to shut down questions while also painting herself in the best possible light. But there was one problem. People weren't buying it. The internet turns on her. Instead of sympathy, her post received a backlash she never saw coming. So you just left your kid behind? Noah is safe and happy, but wasn't invited? That's messed up. What kind of mother does that? You could have easily changed the ticket if you cared. Did your husband not go because of this? For the first time in her life, Sophia wasn't in control of the narrative. She had built her online presence around the illusion of being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter. But now, people were seeing through it. And worse, they were talking. Eleanor's reputation takes a hit. Sophia wasn't the only one under fire. Eleanor had spent decades crafting an image of sophistication, power, and untouchability. To her, perception was everything. She had always been the woman who walked into a room and commanded respect. The matriarch. The one people feared and admired in equal measure. But now? Now she was just the woman who abandoned her own grandson. Her business acquaintances, her socialite friends, they had seen the posts. They had read the comments. And suddenly, her name, once associated with wealth and power, was being whispered in a different tone. I heard she left her grandson behind. Can you believe that? Is this the kind of woman we want to do business with? If she treats her own family like this, how does she treat her clients? Eleanor had always prided herself on being respected. But this was humiliating. The panic call. I had been expecting it. My phone rang in the middle of the afternoon, the screen flashing Sophia's name. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then, I answered. But I didn't speak first. Why are you doing this? Sophia's voice was sharp with frustration, but beneath it, I could hear something else. Panic. Good. Doing what? I asked calmly, leaning back in my chair. You know what? She snapped. Everyone is attacking me online. Why are you letting this happen? I almost laughed. I'm not letting anything happen, Sophia. You did this to yourself. There was silence. She had no argument because she knew I was right. I didn't think people would react this way, she muttered. I smirked. You thought they'd just accept that you abandoned your own son and move on? She let out a sharp breath. Look, I know you're upset. Upset? I repeated, my voice dropping into something colder. No, Sophia. I was upset when I watched my son cry in that airport. I was upset when you laughed at his pain. Now, I'm just watching you deal with the consequences. Her breath hitched. Please, she said softer now. Just say something online. Tell people it's not a big deal. They'll believe you. And there it was. The desperation. She didn't care about Noah's feelings. She didn't care about what she had done. She only cared about how it made her look. I exhaled slowly, then said, No. She gasped. What? You heard me. You made your bed, Sophia. Now lie in it. I hung up. The beginning of the end. That was the moment Sophia realized she had lost control. The illusion of her perfect life was shattering. People weren't admiring her anymore. They were judging her, mocking her, turning their backs on her. And this was only the beginning. Because while she and Eleanor had been busy playing pretend in Hawaii, they had no idea what was happening back home. They had no idea that their empire was already starting to crumble. And when they finally found out, it would be too late. 3 days into our trip, as Noah and I were finishing breakfast at a cozy diner near our hotel, my phone rang. The moment I saw the name flashing across the screen, I smirked. It wasn't Sophia. It wasn't Eleanor. It was Julia, Sophia's younger sister. I let it ring twice before picking up. Hey, Julia. My tone was light, casual. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching Noah spoon an obscene amount of syrup onto his pancakes. You need to come back, Julia blurted out. Her voice was tight, rushed, like she had been holding onto the words for hours. Come back? I repeated, feigning confusion. Something's wrong with the company, she hissed. Eleanor is losing it. Clients are backing out. Something happened with the accounts. I don't know the details, but she's panicking. Sophia's panicking. Everyone's panicking. I set my cup down, tilting my head slightly. Right on schedule. And this has what to do with me? Julia hesitated. Look, I know things have been bad between you and Sophia, but the company was never mine, I interrupted smoothly. That's what Eleanor always reminded me, right? It was her business, her empire, her legacy. I was just the guy handling the finances. A sharp breath from the other end. Julia had always been smarter than her sister. She knew what I was getting at. Wait. Her voice dropped. You did something, didn't you? I leaned back in my chair, watching Noah stab his fork into a piece of pancake, completely oblivious to the fact that his father was dismantling an empire. Did something? I repeated. No, Julia. I just stepped back. Like Eleanor always said I should. Silence. Then, a barely there whisper. Oh my God. The domino effect. Eleanor's entire business had thrived because of me. She may have had the connections, the charm, the ruthless ability to manipulate people, but I was the one who made sure her financial house of cards didn't come crashing down. For years, I had managed everything. Taxes, payroll, investments, liquidity. She made reckless business decisions, but I was always there to fix them. And the moment I saw the way she and Sophia laughed at my son's pain, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight with them. I wouldn't argue. I would simply remove myself from the equation. And once I did, everything would start falling apart. The financial collapse. It had started small, almost unnoticeable. A routine tax audit flagged a few inconsistencies in Eleanor's reports. A client, frustrated with a delayed payment, pulled out of a multi-million-dollar contract. A real estate investment, one I had previously protected from volatility, suddenly started hemorrhaging money. And then, the business account was frozen. Not by me, by the government. Because the moment I pulled out my personal shares, the financials no longer made sense. Eleanor's accountant scrambled to fix the numbers, but it was too late. They were already under investigation. Back to the call. Julia's voice came back, frantic. Look, I don't know exactly what you did, but Eleanor's losing it. I've never seen her like this. And Sophia, she's freaking out because people are turning against her online. Good. Julia let out a frustrated breath. Are you serious? The business is about to collapse. The lawyers are involved. The IRS is looking into things. This is bad, man. I'm sure it is, I mused. You have to come back. Eleanor's demanding you fix this. I chuckled. The audacity. Oh, now she wants me back? After all these years of acting like I was just some necessary inconvenience? After telling me I was lucky to even be a part of her family? After leaving my son behind like he was nothing? I get it, Julia said quickly. I do. But you can't just let them fall apart like this. I leaned forward, resting my elbow on the table. Julia, I'm on vacation. Vacation? She practically screeched. With my real family, I added smoothly. Then, before she could say another word, I hung up. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, I could only imagine what was happening in their overpriced resort suite. Sophia and Eleanor, pacing the room, their phones buzzing nonstop, the stress written all over their faces. Sophia, refreshing her Instagram, watching the hate roll in, her hands shaking as she tried to type another damage control post. Eleanor, dialing lawyers, demanding solutions, only to be met with dead ends. The moment they had mocked my son, they had sealed their fate. And now, they were finally paying the price. The difference between us. That night, while they were drowning in stress, I was sitting on the balcony of our hotel room, watching the fireworks explode over Cinderella's castle. Noah sat beside me, his head resting against my shoulder, still wearing his Mickey ears, his small hand gripping mine. Dad? Yeah, buddy? Are we going to go on trips like this more often? I smiled. Absolutely. Because I had finally realized something. Sophia and Eleanor had never been my real family. They had been leeches, taking from me, disrespecting me, and expecting me to always stay. But now, I was finally free. And them? Their world was burning. And the best part? I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. The next morning, when I woke up, I checked my phone. Missed calls. From Sophia. From Eleanor. From their lawyers. And then, a single text message from Sophia. Please, just talk to me. We need you. I was wrong. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, with a slow smile, I typed back a single word. No. And I turned my phone off. Because I was done cleaning up their messes. This was their problem now. And they could burn in it. The morning after I ignored Sophia's text, I woke up to the sound of Noah's soft breathing beside me, his tiny body curled up under the blankets. The Florida sunlight poured in through the hotel curtains, painting golden streaks across the room. I stretched, exhaled, and smiled. It had been a long time since I had woken up feeling this at peace. No tension in my chest, no stress weighing me down. No waking up to the sound of Sophia sighing in disappointment, rolling over in bed as if my mere presence annoyed her. For the first time in years, I felt free. Then, my phone buzzed. I reached over and checked the screen, already knowing what I would see. 17 missed calls. 6 from Sophia. 5 from Eleanor. The rest? They're lawyers. I chuckled. The panic was setting in. Good. Let them sweat. Eleanor's empire crumbles. I flipped through my emails as I sipped my morning coffee. And there it was. The official confirmation. The business accounts were frozen. The company's biggest investor had backed out. The IRS was now fully involved. Eleanor's entire real estate empire, the one she had spent decades building, the one she had used as a weapon to control people, was unraveling faster than she could salvage it. And all of it? Because I had simply walked away. I had never needed to fight them. I had never needed to destroy them. All I had to do was leave, because I had been the one holding it all together. And without me, it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. Sophia's panic sets in. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Sophia. Please, we need to talk. I ignored it. A few minutes later, another message popped up. I was wrong, okay? I see that now. Just call me. Oh, now she sees it? Now that her world is falling apart? Now that she realizes she can't survive without me? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, just to amuse myself, I typed back a single word. Why? 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing fast, desperate. Because everything is falling apart. Mom's business is on the verge of bankruptcy. The lawyers say the IRS is coming after her. I don't know what you did, but we need you to fix this. I smirked. The irony of it all. For years, I had been the invisible problem solver, the one in the background, the one they never appreciated, never respected. Yet they had always relied on me. And now, they were realizing just how much. The bank account shock. A few hours later, while Noah and I were standing in line for another ride at Disney World, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Sophia. I let it ring twice before answering. What? I said casually. Her voice was frantic. My bank account. Where is my money? She finally noticed. It's gone, Sophia, I said simply. Gone? What do you mean gone? You controlled our finances. You had access. You didn't. She stopped, because she already knew the answer. You never bothered to check, did you? I mused. What did you do? She demanded, her voice shrill. I took back what was mine, I said. You spent years spending my money like it was yours. That's over now. She gasped, realization hitting her like a truck. But I don't have anything left. I smiled. Exactly. Her breath hitched. You can't just cut me off like this. What about Noah? At the mention of my son's name, my amusement vanished. Noah is fine, I said, my voice dark. He's safe. He's happy. Something you never cared about. That's not fair, she snapped. I was just trying to have a good trip. I didn't think. No, I interrupted coldly. You never think, Sophia. That's the problem. I hung up, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel guilty. Eleanor's desperation. That night, another call came through. This time, it was Eleanor. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. So you finally decided to speak, I said smoothly. There was no arrogance in her voice this time, no condescension. There was only desperation. You win, she said, her voice shaking. Is that what you wanted to hear? I smiled. She had never sounded so weak before. I don't know, Eleanor, I said, leaning back. What exactly do I win? She inhaled sharply. Fine. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever you want. But we need you to come back. The company was never mine, I said, cutting her off. That's what you always reminded me, remember? It was your business, your legacy, your decisions. You didn't need me until you did. She was silent. I continued. You took me for granted, Eleanor. You thought I was just some fool you could use. And the moment you didn't need me anymore, you and Sophia threw me away like I was nothing. It wasn't like that, she snapped. anger replacing her fear. It was exactly like that, I said, my voice calm and steady. Silence stretched between us. Then, she did something I never thought I'd hear from her. Please, she whispered. I need you to fix this. I closed my eyes. For years, this woman had controlled everything. She had built an empire by stepping on people, by manipulating them, by using them. And now, she was powerless. She had lost everything. I'm sorry, Eleanor, I said, faking sincerity, but I'm on vacation, with my real family. And I hung up, because for the first time in my life, I realized something. I never needed them. They needed me. And now, they were about to learn what life was like without me. A week after Noah and I returned home from our trip, the doorbell rang. Not once, not twice, but frantically, like someone was trying to break into the house through sheer persistence. I already knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Sophia and Eleanor. They stood outside, disheveled, desperate, their polished arrogance shattered into something pathetic. Sophia clutched her designer purse like it was the last expensive thing she owned, while Eleanor, once the untouchable matriarch of a business empire, had an expression I had never seen before. Defeat. I took my time opening the door. Let them wait. Let them feel what it was like to be ignored, discarded, just like they had done to my son. Finally, I pulled the door open and leaned against the frame, crossing my arms. What do you want? Sophia exhaled shakily. Please, we need to talk. Eleanor, ever the proud one, refused to meet my gaze at first, but I could see the tremor in her hands, the way her breathing was uneven. The power was gone. The confidence was gone. Good. I told you, I said, my voice cool. I'm done cleaning up your messes. Sophia stepped forward, her eyes wide and desperate. I made a mistake. I see that now. We shouldn't have left Noah behind. We weren't thinking. I let out a short laugh. Oh no, Sophia. You were thinking exactly the way you always do. Selfishly. Her face twisted, shame creeping in. But Eleanor finally spoke up, her voice sharper. What do you want? We'll do anything. I raised an eyebrow. We'll do anything? That's rich coming from you, Eleanor. The last time I checked, I was nothing more than a lucky inconvenience to your family. Eleanor inhaled sharply, her pride warring with her desperation. Sophia clutched my arm. Please, I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. She wasn't lying. The news had already spread. Eleanor's business empire had collapsed. Bankruptcy was imminent. Clients had abandoned her. Investors had pulled out, and her properties were bleeding money faster than she could stop it. And her perfect reputation? Destroyed. Sophia wasn't faring much better. The money was gone, her social life ruined, and all those people who used to praise her for being an independent woman had disappeared overnight. Neither of them had anything left, and they had no one else to turn to. I stepped back, letting their words sink into the empty space between us. I wanted them to feel this silence, to feel the power shift, because for the first time in their pathetic, entitled lives, they weren't in control anymore. I was, and they knew it. The divorce papers. I reached inside my house and grabbed an envelope from the entryway table. Sophia's eyes flickered with hope, but the moment she saw the contents, her face crumbled. Divorce papers. Her hands shook as she took the envelope. You're ending this? Just like that? I nodded. No, Sophia. You ended it the moment you laughed at your own son's pain. Her lip trembled. She tried to compose herself, to summon the charm, the manipulation tactics she always used to get what she wanted. But this time, it wasn't working. She had nothing left to offer. No wealth, no status, no control. Eleanor let out a frustrated breath, stepping forward. This is ridiculous. You're willing to throw everything away over some petty revenge? I tilted my head. Petty revenge? I repeated, my voice calm, dangerous. Eleanor's face twisted in irritation. You think this makes you look strong? Leaving your wife? Letting your son grow up in a broken home? That was it. That was the last straw. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, my voice low and sharp as a knife. No, Eleanor. You broke this home. You raised a daughter who saw her own child as disposable. You taught her that money was more important than love. You did this. Not me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Because she knew. She knew she had lost. She knew this was over. Sophia let out a shaky breath. What happens now? I met her gaze. You sign, and then you leave. Tears welled in her eyes. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just nodded. I handed her a pen, and in shaky, uneven strokes, she signed. Just like that, it was over. Sophia let out a shaky, broken breath, staring down at the papers like she still couldn't believe it. So that's it, she whispered. I nodded. That's it. I turned and looked at Eleanor, who stood stiffly, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She thought she could control this. She thought she could manipulate me one last time. But now, she was powerless. And she knew it. I exhaled slowly, stepping back inside my house. You can leave now. Sophia's face fell apart completely, but I didn't stay to watch it. I closed the door, and I didn't look back. The end of an era. I leaned against the door, listening as their footsteps retreated, listening as they realized that the world they had built, the world they had used to control and manipulate people, was gone. I took a deep breath, letting the silence settle around me. For years, I had felt trapped in that marriage, in that toxic family. For years, I had let them belittle me, mock me, treat me like I was nothing. But now, I was free. And them? They were the ones left with nothing. I walked into the living room where Noah was playing with his toys, his face lighting up as I entered. Dad, look, I built a castle. I smiled, sitting down beside him. That's amazing, buddy. Because this was real family. Not money, not power, not manipulation, just love. And as I sat there with my son, I finally understood something. The best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's watching them destroy themselves. The divorce papers had been signed. Sophia and Eleanor were gone. And for the first time in years, my house, my home, felt like mine again. No more suffocating tension. No more waking up with a sinking feeling in my chest. No more walking on eggshells, bracing myself for Sophia's sharp remarks or Eleanor's disapproving glares. Noah and I had settled into a new normal. Breakfast was peaceful. Laughter filled the house instead of passive-aggressive silence. And most importantly, Noah was happy. But I knew it wasn't over. Not completely. Because the moment Sophia had walked away from my doorstep with those signed papers in hand, there was one last thing left to decide. Custody. And if I knew Eleanor, and I did, she wasn't going to let Sophia give up that easily. Which is exactly why, a few days later, when my lawyer called and said, Sophia wants to discuss custody privately, I wasn't surprised. The meeting that changed everything. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, a neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small corner table, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She looked different. Not in the way she usually did after a long night out, when her hair was perfectly styled and her makeup was done to mask exhaustion. No, this was real. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail. No designer handbag. No flashy jewelry. Just a woman who had finally run out of tricks. I sat down across from her, watching as she took a slow breath before speaking. I don't want to fight anymore, she said softly. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Really? That's new. She flinched but nodded. I know I've made mistakes. I let out a short laugh. You laughed at our son when he cried, Sophia. This isn't about mistakes. This is about who you are as a person. She bit her lip, looking down at her coffee. I know. For the first time ever, she looked ashamed. She swallowed hard and looked back up at me. I want to share custody. I studied her. Why? Because he's my son, too. I shook my head. That never stopped you from leaving him behind before. Her jaw clenched. I know, but I don't want to lose him completely. There it was. The truth. She wasn't fighting for Noah because she suddenly wanted to be a good mother. She was fighting for him because she was losing everything else. No money, no business, no reputation. And now, she was terrified of losing the last thing she had left. The final decision. I took a deep breath, choosing my next words carefully. You don't deserve to have him half the time, Sophia. She tensed. But I won't keep him from you completely. Her lips parted in surprise. Noah is old enough to see people for who they are, I continued. He's already starting to understand what kind of mother you've been. And if you want him in your life, it's not going to come from a court order. It's going to come from you actually proving to him that you care. Tears welled up in her eyes. I do care. Then prove it. I leaned forward, my voice firm. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more treating him like a trophy when it's convenient for you. She nodded quickly, wiping her eyes. And one more thing, I added. She looked up at me. Eleanor stays out of his life. Her face paled. You can't. I can, I said firmly. And I will. She opened her mouth to argue, but then closed it. Because she knew. She knew that Eleanor had destroyed everything. And she wasn't going to let her take Noah down, too. After a long pause, she whispered, Okay. I studied her for a moment longer. And for the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not manipulation. Not arrogance. Just defeat. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally learning. The beginning of a real family. After that meeting, things changed. Sophia didn't try to manipulate Noah's affection anymore. She didn't try to use him as a pawn to hurt me. Instead, she actually made an effort. She started showing up to his school events, not because she wanted to impress her friends, but because she wanted to be there for him. She started calling, not to argue with me, but to talk to her son. And Noah? Noah started seeing the difference. He still preferred staying with me most of the time, and that was fine. But at least now, when he spent time with his mother, he wasn't just another accessory in her perfect Instagram life. He was her son. And that was more than I had ever expected. The final goodbye to Eleanor. One evening, a few weeks later, I got a text from Sophia. I cut her off. It was the first time I had smiled after reading one of her messages. She had finally cut Eleanor out of her life. No more controlling influence. No more toxic parenting. Just Sophia, trying, really trying, to be a mother for the first time. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I already knew. She had finally made the ultimate choice. And maybe, just maybe, she was better for it. Months later, as I watched Noah run around our backyard, laughing as he chased the dog, I felt something deep in my chest. Not bitterness, not anger, just peace. Sophia had learned her lesson. Eleanor had lost everything. And Noah? Noah finally had a home filled with love, not conditions. And that was the only victory that ever mattered. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about watching people burn. Sometimes, it's about building something stronger in the ashes. The silence in my house was different now. It wasn't the tense, suffocating quiet that used to settle between Sophia and me. It wasn't the heavy weight of unspoken resentment, or the empty space left by the absence of warmth. No, this silence was peaceful. It was the sound of a house that wasn't filled with judgment, manipulation, or power plays. It was the sound of freedom. And best of all, it was the sound of a home that finally felt like mine. Life without them. It had been months since Sophia signed the divorce papers. Months since Eleanor had been cut out of my life. And in that time, everything had changed. For the first time in years, I could breathe. No waking up to Sophia scrolling through her phone in bed, judging me with a single glance. No more last-minute demands for expensive gifts, extravagant dinners, or social events that felt more like business transactions. No more Eleanor treating me like I was lucky to be in her daughter's life, like I was some accessory she tolerated out of obligation. They were gone. And yet, I had never felt more whole. Building a future for Noah. Noah adjusted better than I expected. At first, I worried. Would he feel the absence of his mother? Would he blame me for the way things had turned out? But then, I saw something in him that I hadn't seen before. Happiness. A weight had lifted from his small shoulders. He didn't have to tiptoe around his mother's moods, didn't have to deal with the passive-aggressive sighs, the constant reminders of how busy she was. Instead, he laughed more. He played freely. He stopped flinching when he spilled something, stopped looking over his shoulder like he was waiting for a scolding that never came. And when he was with Sophia, he started setting boundaries. He no longer begged for her attention. He no longer accepted being second place. And that was all I had ever wanted for him. To know his worth. To know that love wasn't something you had to fight for. It was something you were given freely. The moment it hit me, one evening, I was sitting on the couch, watching Noah play with his Legos. He was completely focused, his little tongue sticking out as he carefully stacked the pieces, lost in his own world. And then, out of nowhere, he looked up at me and grinned. "Dad, you're happier now." I blinked. "What do you mean, buddy?" He shrugged, turning back to his Legos. "You laugh more now. You used to be sad a lot." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because he was right. I had been sad. For years. I had let myself live in a relationship that drained me. I had convinced myself that this was just how things were, that it was better to stay than to start over. I had accepted misery as normal. But now, I was free. And my son saw it before I even did. I reached out and ruffled his hair. "You know what, Noah? You're right." His grin widened. "Told you." And just like that, it hit me. This was it. This was the life I was meant to have. A life without toxicity, without manipulation, without people who only cared about what I could give them. A life where I could be myself. A life where I was enough. What happened to them? I hadn't heard from Eleanor in months. Her business had crumbled beyond repair, her reputation destroyed. The once powerful woman who had controlled everything around her had been reduced to nothing. And the best part? She had done it to herself. She had thought she was invincible. She had thought she could control everyone and everything around her. But when the foundation of her empire was built on lies, manipulation, and deception, it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. As for Sophia, she had changed. Not completely. People like her never fully change. But she had learned. She had lost everything she thought mattered. The money, the power, the perfect image. And in the aftermath, she had been forced to rebuild herself. She had stopped trying to impress strangers online. She had stopped chasing an image of success that had never been real. And for the first time, she had actually started being a mother. She still wasn't perfect. She never would be. But at least now, she wasn't trying to use Noah as a prop in her fake perfect life. She was just trying. And that was enough. The freedom of moving on. One afternoon, as I was grocery shopping, I saw Sophia at the end of the aisle. She spotted me at the same time. For a moment, I thought she would turn and walk away. But instead, she offered a small nod. Not arrogance. Not fake politeness. Just acknowledgement. A quiet, unspoken understanding that we had both moved on. I gave her a nod back and kept walking. Because I didn't need anything from her anymore. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. I had already won. The best revenge. They say the best revenge is living well. And for a long time, I didn't believe that. For a long time, I thought I needed to prove something to make sure that Sophia and Eleanor suffered as much as they made me suffer. But now, I understood. The best revenge wasn't ruining them. It was watching them ruin themselves. It was knowing that I had escaped. It was waking up every morning in a house filled with love and laughter, instead of one filled with resentment. It was knowing that my son would grow up in a world where he was cherished, not used as a pawn. It was freedom. It was peace. And that was better than any revenge I could have ever dreamed of. The weight of the past was finally lifting. For years, I had felt trapped. Trapped in a toxic marriage, trapped in a family that saw me as nothing but a tool, trapped in a cycle of giving while they took without gratitude. But now, I woke up without dread. Now, I lived in a home filled with laughter instead of tension. Now, I had peace. And the best part? The people who tried to break me were now falling apart themselves. Watching the empire crumble. It started small. A headline in the business section of the newspaper. Once a real estate mogul, Eleanor faces financial collapse amid legal troubles. Then, an online article. Former socialite struggles to maintain lavish lifestyle as IRS investigation continues. And then it was everywhere. The whispers in elite circles. The stares when Eleanor walked into a room. The judgment from the very people who once idolized her. She had spent her whole life building an empire, crafting an image of a woman who was above everyone else, only to watch it all come crashing down. Her money? Gone. Her power? Diminished. Her reputation? Ruined. And now? Now she was nothing more than a cautionary tale. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a single finger to make it happen. She had destroyed herself. Sophia's fall from grace. Sophia was no better off. Her social media, once filled with carefully curated perfection, had gone quiet. No more photos of extravagant trips. No more designer outfits. No more posts about the perfect life she had once flaunted. Why? Because there was nothing left to show off. The money was gone. The friends who once clung to her, who showered her with praise and admiration, had vanished the moment she was no longer useful. And Sophia, who once believed she was untouchable, was now just another person trying to pick up the pieces of a life she had shattered. She wasn't homeless. She wasn't destitute. But for the first time, she was just like everyone else. And I knew that was her worst nightmare. The attempt at reconciliation. I knew it was coming. It was only a matter of time before Sophia tried to reach out again. And sure enough, one evening, as I was finishing dinner with Noah, my phone lit up. Sophia, can we talk? I stared at the message for a moment, debating whether to ignore it. But curiosity won. So I responded. Me? About what? A few minutes later, my phone rang. I answered but didn't say anything. I wanted her to speak first. I wanted to apologize, she said finally, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I leaned back in my chair, watching Noah doodle at the table. For what, exactly? She sighed. For everything. For the way I treated you. For how I treated Noah. For what we did at the airport. Her voice cracked slightly, and for the first time, it didn't sound calculated. It sounded real. I lost everything, you know, she whispered. And I realized too late what actually mattered. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. And what mattered, Sophia? There was a pause. You. Noah. Family. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her words settle. Would this have meant something a year ago? Maybe. But now? Now, I didn't need an apology. I didn't need her to realize what she lost. Because I had already moved on. I'm glad you figured that out, I said finally. Does that mean we can fix this? She asked, almost hopeful. I let out a quiet laugh. Sophia, there's nothing left to fix. The silence on the other end was deafening. And then, after a few seconds, she whispered, I figured you'd say that. She sniffled, but I could tell, this time, it wasn't manipulation. This time, she was actually feeling the weight of what she had lost. Take care, Sophia, I said quietly, and then I hung up. I didn't look at my phone again. I didn't need to, because for the first time in years, I had all the closure I would ever need. A new legacy. The next morning, I woke up early. I made pancakes for Noah. I helped him pack his school bag, made sure he had his favorite snack, and drove him to school while we sang along to his favorite songs. And as I watched him run inside, waving at his friends, I realized something. I was happy, not just content, not just relieved that the nightmare was over, but truly, deeply happy. And that was a feeling I never thought I'd have again. Because while Eleanor was drowning in the consequences of her own greed, while Sophia was learning the hardest lesson of her life, I was here, building a real life, a real home, a real family. And I didn't need money, status, or power to have that. I just needed peace. And now, I finally had it. The final realization. Later that evening, as I sat on the back porch with a beer in hand, watching the sun set, I thought about everything that had happened, everything I had lost, everything I had gained, and I realized something. The best revenge? It wasn't about ruining them. It wasn't about getting even. It was this, sitting here, knowing that I had walked away with my dignity intact, knowing that Noah had a father who loved him unconditionally, knowing that I had escaped a life that would have drained me dry. That was the real victory. Because karma had already taken care of the rest. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as I sat on the porch, a quiet sense of contentment settling deep within me. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't burdened by the weight of someone else's expectations, someone else's manipulations, someone else's needs. I was here, in this moment, at peace. Noah was playing in the backyard, his laughter carrying through the crisp evening air. He wasn't worried about being ignored or left behind. He wasn't living under the constant shadow of his mother's indifference or his grandmother's cold control. He was just a kid, a happy, carefree kid. And that was everything. The difference was clear. Sophia and Eleanor had spent years believing that money and status were what made a family valuable. To them, family was about power, about control, about who could take the most while giving the least. But they had been wrong. Because this was family. This was Noah chasing fireflies in the yard while wearing his favorite superhero pajamas. This was us cooking dinner together, with him stirring the spaghetti sauce and getting it all over the counter while laughing. This was bedtime stories, whispered secrets, and unconditional love. This was real, and they had never understood it, which is why they had lost everything. The final attempt. It had been weeks since Sophia last reached out. She hadn't tried to manipulate me. She hadn't begged for money. She had accepted that there was no coming back from this. Until tonight, my phone buzzed on the table beside me. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be a message from a friend or a reminder for work. But no, it was Sophia. For a moment, I debated ignoring it. But something told me this was different. I picked up the phone and answered. Hey. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. Sophia. I kept my tone neutral. I just wanted to check in, she said. See how Noah's doing. I glanced at the yard, watching my son run across the grass with pure joy. He's doing great, I said simply. She exhaled. That's good. There was silence. Then, in a shaky voice, she said something I never expected. I know I'll never fix what I did, but I want to be better for him. I want him to have a mother he can be proud of. For the first time, she wasn't trying to get something from me. She wasn't making excuses. She was just admitting the truth. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that sink in. Then be better, Sophia. But don't do it for me. Do it for him. She sniffled. Yeah, I will. And then, for the first time in years, I heard something in her voice that I had never heard before. Sincerity. Maybe she would change. Maybe she wouldn't. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I had already moved on. The best choice I ever made. After I hung up, I stepped outside and watched Noah chase the fireflies, his eyes bright with wonder. Dad, look, they glow. I smiled. I see that, buddy. He ran up to me, breathless and grinning. Can we catch some and keep them in a jar? I knelt beside him, ruffling his hair. We could, but you know what? They're happiest when they're free. He thought about that for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I guess you're right. And just like that, I realized, so was I. For years, I had felt trapped, convinced that I had to stay in a life that wasn't mine. But the moment I chose freedom, for myself and for Noah, everything changed. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to watch Sophia or Eleanor suffer. Because the real victory wasn't in their downfall. It was in this moment. A peaceful night. A happy son. A life filled with love instead of obligation. And for the first time in a long, long time, I knew I had made the best choice I ever could. I had chosen us. And we had one.